Hello, everyone. Welcome to SureFire Live. I'm your host, Mark Stoner. Thank you for joining me tonight. Facebook has made it super hard to do this podcast or do this live all of a sudden. They won't let our streaming service go to groups, and they've made it really confusing on how to do these. So if you can't join live, I apologize. We will repost, and then I'll watch for comments if you have questions. I think tonight's guest has a lot of really good information for our industry, and I hope as many people can see it as possible. I've been gone for a couple weeks, had some really fun events. I wanted to show you, we just finished our SureFire Accelerator group, which is a group of people that use SureFire, and it's kind of a value-added service we have, and it's for chimney companies that want to really try to go fast and have fun at it. And I wanted to show you this quick video that one of the people that were there made for our group. We went down to Cancun, had a great time, learned a lot, and then also played a lot. So here's a quick video of that. I hope this plays right. Let me see if I can. Well, anyway, I'll play it like this. Yeah. Oh, my screen is going crazy on me. Anyway, I hope you, that was a great time. We had a great time with our group. We had a special speaker there, Mark Sanborn. He wrote a really good, amazing customer service book called The Fred Factor, and he was our speaker. And it was really an amazing time with a guy who teaches you how to go next level on customer service, how to be a great company, do what the great companies do, what that looks like, how it manifests itself. So it was a good time. So I can see that not as many people are able to join us right now, and I hate that. I can see that it's sticking people not being able to join, but doesn't matter. We're going to record it and send it out. So let me bring in. Well, let me just preface this. I know that for me, insurance is a big deal. Trying to learn how to navigate it, how to learn how to have your customers go through it, how to like I got a lot of questions for our guests because I've had trouble with it. I know a lot of people have. He's created a course. I'm going to put a link to it, and very well attended. And I can tell too from the comments he's getting how important this topic is for the industry. And we'll talk about that. So let me bring on Corey Flowers. Hey man, how are you doing?
Doing well, and you?
Good. Thank you for joining me tonight. Appreciate you taking time. You before the show, you said you had some kid things going on, and that's the life of an entrepreneur business guy. So thank you for joining us.
Happy to be on the show.
Well,
podcast.
For people who don't know you, I've known you a little bit and gotten to know you more recently. Tell people who you are, and then how'd you get into this insurance training kind of world?
So my grandpa started a chimney business back in 1981. My dad and all my uncles got into it. My dad was the one that stuck with it. I got into it as a kid, forced to do free manual labor for dad, and tried to get away from it. Came back to it back in 2012. And I took the family business over in 2018, and but pretty quick when I got back in it, Dad put me in the office instead of out in the field, to groom me to get ready to run things. You can't run the business without knowing what's going on in the office. And as with everything, things change, and the industry with insurance and the game with insurance has changed dramatically in the last decade or so. And it's become a lot more in the office and a lot more calls and what you know, what you learn. There's a game, there's a dance to it.
Right.
It's not black and white. And so while Dad was out in the field with workers and whatnot, I'd be in the office trying to figure out, okay, the insurance company said no. What can we do? And there for a long time, okay, they said no, you have to pay out of pocket. That was the only option.
Right.
Or you could try to sue your insurance company, or maybe try to get another insurance company. There was just like we didn't have the answers.
Right.
We just moved on. But through tenacity and being, quite frankly, an asshole, and I chose to fight and try to find and learn how to push back and say, no, I know this is a damn chimney fire.
Right.
Oh, this customer deserves this. This is the right thing to do. How can I push through and make that happen? And it's been a long road. And especially when people are in my class or people hear me talk about it, I do get fired up. So I probably should say that my opinions are not the opinions of Mark Stoner or SureFire, or anyone else. I speak on my own half. I like to preface these conversations with, I'm not a public adjuster. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a forensic engineer. I'm just a chimney sweep, just a lonely old chimney sweep.
Well, that's the best people to hear from is guys in the battle with us. I mean, not always the best people, but you've got a process. And let me just say, Nathan and Jameson that are joining us, Facebook has changed everything. And I sent out links to backstage at the show, not links to watch it. So if anybody's watching this and they get this weird linking thing and it's trying to get you have permission and you show up backstage, which I see a couple people back there, I'm sorry. I was just trying to invite people and it sent out the link through Facebook. So hopefully you can watch this. You're welcome to sit backstage and watch it or listen to it because you can hear it. But I see that this is a weird deal. So I apologize. So you were a chimney guy. You got frustrated with the insurance companies. They've gotten harder to deal with. Do you know why they've gotten so hard to deal with for us?
My personal opinion is that as we learn more and the education gets out, our bids get bigger because we realize that, we're putting fire in somebody's house. So we have to address that properly and not just Band-Aid the work. And when our bids get bigger, they want to deny them even more. So they're giving even more pushback.
I've heard that also that they, there's big losses in the insurance industry and across the board, they are really denying a lot of claims unless you learn to fight for them. Unless, the first answer is no, like always across the board. And they've gotten really used to that. And they figured out that a lot of people will be okay with no. And honestly, the homeowners are being, they're paying for a service that they, or coverage that they aren't getting, they're not getting the value of what they're paying for. So, man, hold on. I got a couple chats here. One is private, says free backstage passes to Stoner Flower Show. I'll take it. That's hilarious. And then, so Ferg tried to come on. Whoops. And then, I hate when it does this. Man, this thing is crazy on me tonight. Well, anyway, so go ahead and tell us your process. I know you have a class, and tell us what you learned and how that all works.
So, the class I taught yesterday, we ended up taking 4 hours, although we were supposed to take 3.5. And I still feel like it's the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Because every scenario is different. And man, there's just, to create a flow chart would take quite a bit of time. And then you learn something new, and then it throws the whole flow chart off. So I sent you a link in the email that someone sent me just a little bit ago. I didn't realize that I had it. I don't know if it's something you could pull up. It's got a bunch of pictures of a job someone in my class sent me from yesterday.
See if I can find it. But yeah, go ahead and I'll see if I can find it.
And I guess I look at all these just like doing a chimney inspection. I'm collecting information, and when I collect that information to get a whole picture, I'm inspecting the interior and the exterior, and then I can give the customer, here's what you got going on, here's what I recommend, here's what is black and white, here's what's opinion. And I have to do that almost exponentially when it comes to insurance.
Right.
The first some of the first questions is ask a customer like, hey, I believe you've had a chimney fire or a sudden occurrence event, high heat event. We try to not say.
Well, what happened?
Am I here? Okay.
Oh,
right.
You froze for a second. All right, you're back.
Okay. But we've tried to say chimney fire a little bit less, because there's some scenarios where things get damaged from a high heat where there may not have been fire necessarily, just a large temperature difference, but that's a sudden occurrence high heat event. But telling the customer, hey, letting them know that this is not the only option, but that we recommend it because it gets expensive very quickly. Some people, and coming at the game, you don't want the customer to feel like you're hungry to go the insurance route, but that it's a very viable option.
Talk about that for 1 second. Chimney guy goes in and he finds damage.
Yeah.
This thing had happened actually just yesterday. A person showed a crack up through the liner. It was clear crack. He said chimney fire. Engineers said misuse or lack of maintenance thing.
Oh yeah.
Let's just go with that. How would you handle that if it happened to your company?
So when I hear the lack of maintenance thing, that's my favorite one.
That's crazy.
So in my inspection, in my inspection reports, right? We've got some copy and paste. We use ChimSpec, and one of the things that we've used for a long time is I've seen in the forum someone said, "What's the fastest chimney fire you ever seen happen?" So I'm going to ask you, what's the fastest chimney fire you ever seen happen?
The fastest I've seen happen. What do you mean,
from
like
zero to chimney fire? Like what shortest period of time?
God, it can happen in just a few minutes. Right. I caught my own chimney on fire in a few minutes one time. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So in customer wise, the fastest we've seen was 10 days. A customer called us up, and I actually say this in the report. Customer called us up, had someone else install a new stove and liner, called us 10 days later and said,
from clean to chimney fire.
Fresh.
That's
boom, brand new out the gate.
I would have said 30 days, probably that way.
Okay. Customer called us, said 10 days ago, another company installed all this stuff and they're having issues. We said, stop using it. This is when we can be out. We came out and we found a massive chimney fire, expanded creosote in the liner. And it was like mind blowing, right? They were having little itty bitty baby fires in a wood burning furnace. And so the smoke is wafting and it's very thick. And if the smoke can't get out before it condenses and cools, you get creosote built up on the inside. You get the right spark. Boom, chimney fire, pyrolyzed creosote, right?
Right.
There we go. There it is. Let's not jump into that yet because I'm ADD and that's going to throw me off.
Sorry. I got to figure out how to take it out of there.
I got to look in a different direction because you're going to
don't look at it. That's funny.
So we also had a customer probably 7, 8, 9 years ago, back when my father owned the business, and we went out to do a chimney sweep, and we were looking at it, and we're finding 2 and 3 inches thick per side of the wall of creosote buildup, and it's just glazing. It's there's no evidence of pyrolyzed creosote, and so this customer's been burning like crap for 30 years and not had it swept. They finally started. They finally called us out. I can't remember why. Or they were sweeping it themselves. I think. You get an older guy, been sweeping it themselves for 30 years. calls us out. And every single time I hear that, I hear, oh man, it's going to be bad. And I have to tell someone that's been doing something for 30 years to be doing something wrong for 30 years.
You don't want to hear it. Yeah.
But I say in a report that, why can one customer go 30 years without having a chimney fire and having massive amounts of glazing and massive amounts of fuel in a system, while one other customer can't go 10 days without having a chimney fire? I can't tell you why. And there's a white paper on chimney fires, a scientific document, the white paper on chimney fires, that says, agrees with me.
Right.
That there's a specific spark that is a variable that is as equatable to an act of God. So whether they had it maintained or not, a chimney fire is a sudden occurrence event, just like a tornado or a hailstorm, on shingles or a windstorm or,
kitchen fire, anything. Yeah.
Chimney fire, fire damage. This was very insightful for me. I was talking with someone that had nothing to do with any claims I was involved in, that was a higher up in insurance. And I was like, what, like, give me a bone or something. And he said, fire damage is fire damage. And so I've been using that for a long time now, that I don't care if it's in your chimney or if it's in any other part of your house, fire damage is fire damage.
So on this unit, you saw a crack, denied, engineer comes out, says that. What's your next step? That you get denied. What do you do? How can we fight this as a company, as an industry?
Got a couple different things you can do. And it's really throwing some darts at the wall, and sometimes you miss the dartboard completely, and sometimes you hit a bullseye. I'd say it's important, in my opinion, in my experience, to try to go out and meet with the engineer while they're coming and doing the site survey. I was just at one last week, and the engineer made a really good point. There's no fire damage on the cap. There's obvious breaks in the flue tile. There's some pyrolyzed creosote, but when my job is causation. He was actually a CFI, not a forensic engineer. Some are both, and so I'm going to kind of segue a little bit. A CFI, certified fire investigator, and an engineer. Sometimes a guy can be both. Oftentimes they're only one. And I get along with CFIs because they're about facts. Usually engineers, it's rare that I get along with them because I always want to come up with some BS. So, which is ironic because I always wanted to be an engineer. So, this guy was a CFI, and he was saying, there's no fire damage on the cap. There's other repairs that the customer had over the years that look like they're intact, and this, that, and the other thing. So it's arguable that this chimney fire happened before these repairs and before this cap was put up. And I said, that's a pretty good point. However, how do you know if it was a slow chimney fire or a fast one?
Right.
And he goes, oh yeah, okay. Now, I don't know what his report's going to say, because I've had him agree with me face to face many times, and the reports say the exact opposite. So if you're in a one-party state, I recommend you record your conversations. If you're not in a one-party state, you better know how to navigate that. Ohio's a one-party state, so that's great.
Right.
But to come back, what would you do? Hopefully you were there. Hopefully you had some dialogue, and you try to keep it respectful and try to make it seem like you were there to help. Have the right candor. It doesn't take too much to flip my switch, because for the last 10 years I've been experiencing this, and so I know what to expect, but you can hire your own engineer, right? If you find one that's honest.
When you say you, do you mean the homeowner, or are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, of course you want the homeowner to pay for it, and you want to tell them that this is the best course of action. You want to be able to win your customer over in the front end and prep them, and be able to let them know that this can be a fight. This can be a big pain, and feel them out and see if they even want to go through that route. If they want you to help them with it, if they want to handle it themselves, if they want to hire a public adjuster. If they're the kind that really doesn't want to deal with anything, public adjuster is the best route to go. Right. But what can you do with the engineer? there is actually a way to report engineers that are blatantly lying and writing bad reports. You can do it through your state engineering licensing board. Through I had it in my class. Can't remember them off the top of my head. You can report them to the state insurance board.
Right.
There's the APA.
We've done that before with insurance that denied claim. We reported them to the state board, and sometimes just the mere threat that you're going to do that. You know, sometimes they've denied it even when they knew there was a fire. Like even when there was somebody said yes, there was a fire, and they still didn't want to pay it due to lack of maintenance.
My favorite thing is when an engineer, especially a forensic engineer, will talk out of both sides of his mouth, and they do it almost every time, because they'll talk about how they might have a little blurb about fire damage or sudden occurrence high heat event or indicative of a chimney fire, but the whole report, other than this one little spot, is talking about how there's all these deficiencies that the insurance doesn't owe them for because it's deteriorated, and there's this issue and that issue and this issue and that issue. It's similar to what we do. We do the same thing. There's all these issues. We got to communicate about them. But they point to those as if like, okay, because all this is due to lack of maintenance, the insurance company, it makes it look like a denial. I've had insurance adjusters read a report and thought that it was denial because they didn't see that little blurb that was hidden in all that BS that said chimney fire or sudden occurrence high heat event or thermal shock. So you got to read the report. Number one, before you try to punt somewhere, you need to let the customer know, because the insurance company doesn't owe us contractors nothing. They don't even need to talk to us unless the insurance, unless our mutual client demands it, right? You can tell the customer, or you can ask to say, hey, Mr. Customer, you know, you're going to let them know the insurance company is going to do one of three things. They're going to deny it for sure. If they don't, that'll be wonderful. It'll be a home run, but they're going to deny it. They're going to try to scare you, either from moving forward or make you think that it's not a coverable loss, and say that they may lie. I find them lying all the time. And they might just drag their feet long enough to make you just give up and look for another avenue because you want to get things done.
Correct.
So those are the three biggest tools. You want to let your customer know, hey, this is what you should expect. But when a forensic engineer comes out or whatever he is, he's with the school, a very knowledgeable guy. When he sends a report, you have a right to request it as a customer and then send it to me right away as soon as you get it, because I want to read through it.
Well, let's talk about that. So the engineer says lack of maintenance. How does lack of maintenance cause a crack? And like if it wasn't a heat, and they're going to deny it.
Yeah.
Do you have a series of letters? Now, do you ask like the customer to sign off as you being the advocate so that you handle it from there? Or are you always trying to advise the homeowner and they take care of their own thing?
So you get into some gray space, and the insurance companies have been pushing on me harder with this lately, because I know what coverage A, B, and C is. I know what code upgrades are. I know what some of the lingo is and what the customer has a right to legally, because every single insurance policy has to meet certain criteria. But when you start talking coverage policy and stuff, that is the role of a public adjuster. And if you are in a state that requires a public adjuster to have some sort of licensing, then or in a state that requires the public adjuster to be a lawyer, now you're practicing public adjusting or practicing law without a license, and none of us want to be doing that, right?
Yeah, maybe I didn't phrase that right. I don't mean like taking on the role. Like I can tell you, this happens all the time. We put in a claim, they adjuster calls me and wants
Yeah.
to know my side of it. And then
That's true.
I'll meet the engineer out. I'll do the same thing, go through it. And then I ask him to prove his point. So he's trying to make me prove that the chimney fire cracked. I'm like, how can you prove it didn't? And like, usually when you ask them to show that prove your point. I mean, you're going to try to deny mine. Well, then prove yours that literally not sweeping the chimney crack that without this, there's like in your case, it didn't show signs of fire. Well, then how did it crack? And like for us, if they say settling, well, then show me other settling cracks, show me differential, or show me rotational, or show me some type of other cracking, not in that middle flue tile right above the smoke chamber that cracks all the time. Show me that. Show me how it got there. And usually we don't have too many denials, but lately, it's been that. So again, like what do you do on the next step? They say denied, and then you do what?
Yeah, I mean, denied, I want to see the report and read through the report because of what I was saying before.
Right.
If I read through the report, I have not yet had a conversation with an engineer or CFI after the fact and got them to change their mind. I have not been able to do that after they rate the report, which is why I found it so important to be out there when they're collecting the information.
That's a great point.
I'm learning all the time. The way you just put that was golden. I've not put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I've not had one in person deny what the crack was a longitudinal crack in a flue tile through multiple flue tile. I've not had one to my face say, "Oh, that's not from a fire." And if they did, I would look at them and be like, "Where'd you get your degree?" It would be hard not to say that. I've said some pretty rude things to these guys, but they usually ask for it.
I think you just said a key point. I think the whole defense has to be when it's happening. Make sure the homeowner lets you be out there. And once they write the report, you're right about that. I can't tell you how many times, if I've been denied a couple of times lately, but I wasn't there. The engineer shows up before we get there, or I didn't even know he was coming, and that type of thing. So I think one big takeaway from the people that are listening, and thank you for all the people that are backstage. I see them gathering backstage, and you've got a link to backstage, but feel free to sit there. And a lot of people are, but the key, I think, what you're getting at is be there on the inspection, do great reporting, show that, then be there for the inspection. And then what do you do? And they deny it. You're like, well, they denied it. Then what? They just pay out of pocket, or do they report to the board? Like, what's the next? Like, they're saying, for sure, this is a fire. I want to fight the insurance company.
And some customers are like, yeah, screw these guys, let's go for it. And like they feed off of the energy. And some people are the opposite. They don't want to deal with it at all. So I mean, like, you got to let your customer guide the experience, and then you go from there. But if it's denied and the customer still wants to fight, then we can report them to a couple different reporting agencies. There's a couple watchdogs. One's called the APA. I want to say the Associated Policyholder Association or something. I got it in my class paperwork somewhere. I should have it readily go, but I don't. Okay. And if reporting them for a blatant thing, like I said, the customer can hire their own forensic engineer, structural engineer. Something that's actually super important in my experience, and again, I'm not a lawyer and every state is different, I'm not a public adjuster, is that if once from the time that you file the claim, at least in Ohio, my experience is most insurance companies, you have 1 year from filing the claim till you can file a lawsuit. Okay. So if this is dragging on and taking that long and you get close to the 1 year mark, way before you even get there, you need to let the customer know, hey, this is dragging on. We need to get a hold of an insurance lawyer to file the suit, just to file so that you retain the right to do so past that year mark, right? You've already filed it. So that you have it if you need it. And the insurance company, they'll delay it just to get past that 1 year mark. because then you can't do nothing. You can't sue them.
So we had Kurt Chandler on the show probably close to a year ago,
Okay.
and Kurt was saying very similar things, but I think at that point it was, process the claim, and if you're not getting justice, that is when you kind of hire a private, you hire your own people, and I think a public adjuster is probably one of your better. He's going to try to make the claim bigger, and then that's how he gets paid out of it.
Yeah,
But
and
go ahead.
If you've got larger claims, it's easier to justify that, and the
Mhm.
smaller claims is a little harder to justify. And
Right.
I use public adjusters when I can, or if I'm so busy that I don't have time to dedicate to something, I'll punt to that.
Mhm.
Which I enjoy the fight, to be honest, if you can't tell, but the more hands in the soup, the less soup
Yeah.
everyone gets.
A lot of times they look for different things than we do. We're strictly
True.
looking
Yeah, they go
at
over the coverage C stuff, the contents, and paint in the room with a coat of primer, 2 coats of paint,
right.
and other things, and that customers may or may not use to help cover, their fee. I'm aware of that. That's very helpful. And the insurance agents or adjusters don't play games with the public adjuster, because they know the public adjuster knows all the laws and can really hurt them for it, and hold them to the laws. Like in the state of Ohio, I'm familiar that you have 21 days from the time of filing the claim to have an inspection, or at least have it scheduled.
Right.
In an appraisal, it's a similar thing with appraisal. If you file an appraisal demand, there's a limited period of time. I want to say it's 21 days also. I may be wrong, but something in that time frame that the insurance company has to name their appraiser. And if they don't, they just pay you. I had that happen on a job here recently, which this is a huge tip, big tip. Okay. Let's say you have a claim that has taken much, much longer than it should have, and you mistakenly, or the customer mistakenly, did not file suit and doesn't have that right. I've actually used appraisal twice, final appraisal demand with an appraiser twice now, to get the insurance company back in negotiations. Now, this is obviously on a claim where they agreed that there was a chimney fire. They just, the amount that they wanted to give you was BS.
So when you say appraisal, do you mean, are you talking about an appraiser or an adjuster?
So in the fine print of insurance, your insurance agreement, okay, is a process called appraisal. And so in appraisal, it takes the insurance company out of the equation of how much should this job be. Okay. So the customer gets an appraiser. They get their appraiser, might be $1,000 to $2,500 for their work. They get paid at the end of the process. The insurance company has to pay for their appraiser. These two appraisers get together and by law have to agree on a third guy called an umpire. And if their appraiser just drags their feet after he's been named, you can literally go to court and the judge will demand him to do it. And so they have to agree on the third guy. That way, hopefully your appraiser is amazing. You would be foolish. I'm going to try to use proper vernacular here. Foolish to not get someone that's really good. The insurance company is going to get someone, and they're probably really good, but not in the way that you want them to be. They know all the stuff, and to try to leave off the paper, right? Because they're going to come up with some bunk number. Your guy is going to come up with a reasonable number, and the two of them have to agree on a number. If they agree and both of them sign that appraisal demand, it's a piece of paper. If both of them sign it, that's it. Insurance company by law has to pay you that amount. But if they cannot come to agreement, they go to umpire, and the umpire's fee is another appraiser, gets split between the insurance company and the homeowner. And it's just, hopefully you have an umpire that is incredible. And there's some tricks for that.
Well, so let's just say that, and I've had this happen, and maybe this is well. I don't want to. If you have like, because mainly we're here to talk about your class that you're putting on. You
Well,
have
my
30.
class covers all these things, right? And like these are
Okay.
things that a
So
lot of people
if
don't
I'm
know.
tracking along with your class, then great. I guess it sounds like you go into more detail in your class. And let's just talk about that for a second. You had I think it was your first one the other day on this
Yeah,
topic. You had a lot of attendees. You're going to have
it was
another
good.
one. Let me put your link up here real quick. If you're interested in this class that he's doing, and that,
So I don't have the next class like lined up yet, right?
yeah,
So if you want to just put my email,
yep.
um, I'll give you. Let me give you actually my company email. You got my personal. That'll work.
Is that one
Um,
okay?
that's great. That's good.
Yeah.
If you want to email me and say, hey, I want updates about the next class you're holding. So when I get
Right.
it put together, I can invite it to you on via email instead of trying to find me on Facebook. That's
So,
fine.
one of the people that are backstage, accident. So whenever they message me, it comes in under private chat. He says the insurance policy doesn't define what qualifies as proper maintenance of the fireplace slash chimney. I believe it's only one state that specifies yearly sweeping. So how can they determine when a sweep was required? Furthermore, how can we determine how much creosote was produced for X amount of fires?
Yeah, those are great questions to ask. I already know that the insurance company's answer to one of those questions. Um, how can they determine when a sweep was required? Um, Insurance policy doesn't define what qualifies as proper maintenance of the fireplace chimney. The insurance company's rebuttal to that is going to be that they have a clause that maintenance is required, and it doesn't list any maintenance requirements for the house, whether it's making sure your house has good siding or painting, or making sure that your plumbing works properly, or any of that jazz. They don't specify any of that. So I know that they're going to push back on that, but those are great questions. Anything to make them think and potentially trip them up, I'm all for. I'm going to copy those and
I
use them.
can I can tell you I was on a claim once where the chimney fell on the house. And it
Yeah.
was leaning and they kept fixing it with silicone. Like there was a crack developing and they kept fixing it with silicone and mortar and stuff and not addressing it was one of those three-sided chimneys where the weight was on the
Oh
roof
wow.
and
Yeah.
it fell over during a storm and it went through the whole. It was a heavy chimney. It was brick. But the insurance company denied the rebuilding of the chimney because they said you knew it was failing. You band-aided it. You could see where they band-aided it forever. And the insurance company paid for the roof repair, the interior repair, the getting the chimney off the roof, but they would not pay to rebuild that chimney because they said it was a known issue and they did not do maintenance properly and they had proof of it. So I do know of the one time to address this that if there's neglect on
Neglect.
maintenance,
Sure.
and then they can see it, like they should have known they didn't do a thing. Does NFPA, the recommendations of inspect annually, clean as necessary, ever come up in
14.9.
this? What's that?
14.9 damage.
So, do you use this in your process?
Um, yeah, I know in the codes and standards, UL listings and all the ASTM requirements and OSHA requirements, if there's electrical pole too close to the chimney, what do we have to do to get a generator there and
Right,
power to the house while we're doing the work, and all these different things that, all these requirements that exist. I use them all
right,
to my customers' advantage. Absolutely. No, if you don't know the codes, then you got nothing to stand on. You need to read your NFPA,
for
and you need
sure.
to know your IRC, and you need to know if you're an IRC or NFPA state, and you need to know if you're not in an NFPA state, how to make that respected, because NFPA 211 is called out in the IRC. Kind of, I definitely every piece of knowledge and technical information you have, you can use to your advantage, because that's what they're trying to. I mean, if you don't know, they can beat you with it. I remember
Right.
one of the first forensic engineers I ever experienced. man, I wish I could go back in time. But this liner was roached, man. It was purpled and all that, and you could tell there was crease on the out. Like there was failed so bad, there was crease on the outside of the stainless liner, inside the stainless liner. Someone put regular yellow insulation around the top of the liner and the flue between the stainless and the clay tile, and that was just torched. And I was not certified in anything at the time. And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, CSIA certified, and they don't recognize purpling as evidence of fire damage anymore."
Right.
I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's no longer respected as a evidence of fire damage." And today, if that guy said that to me, I would say, "Okay, show me where you found that." Number one, and hold him to it. And number two, I'd say, let's get a metallurgist on the line. Let's get a metallurgist involved. Just basic metallurgy to prove that you're lying straight to through your teeth, you know.
Yeah, I mean, so on that, if so, tell me some. Do you want to go over those pictures I had earlier? You said that was going to. You want to
Yeah,
talk about?
right.
Let's talk about this. So
Yeah.
I've got it right here.
So in my class, we had quite a few people in the class. It was awesome. First time that I did it via Zoom, which worked really well to get some people that, get them in their shop or in their home. I've taught this class or similar. I usually get about an hour and a half to 2 hours. I've taught it through Copperfield. I've taught it at the NCSG, at the Chimney Expo, at the National Chimney Sweep Convention when it was in Vegas. I've got to teach in a lot of places, but it was we took 4 hours, and I got this from one of the people in the class yesterday. They sent it to me right before I jumped on here. So kind of go through the pictures here.
So let me see if I can
go wood burning stove into a fireplace, into the chamber of the fireplace.
Right.
That's awesome. I love the creosote coming out the pipe.
Let me see this one. Okay, do you got this one? Can you see it?
Old stove, probably 1980s stove. You can see that the fireplace doors are roached. Those are fire damaged by themselves. Next picture.
Okay, let me see if I can go back. And then
okay, the flue, you see different types of creosote here. You got melted, you got expanded, pyrolyzed, you got some glazing in there.
Mm-hmm.
That all signs of chimney fire.
Let me see here.
There you go. Yeah. I love that one on the right. That's amazing. So when the first time I taught this class was at the Chimney Expo in King of Prussia in 2019, or maybe it was 2020, right before COVID hit, right before it went nuts. And I had a picture similar to this, and I asked, we had a lot of people in the class, like 300-400 people. It was amazing. And I asked people what they thought that brown stuff was on the chimney, and most of them thought it was rust somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, that is not rust. That is migrated creosote through the system, through the masonry. No amount of PCR is going to get that out of whether it's 4 inches of masonry of brick or cinder block, whether it's filled or hollow. That PCR is only going to sink in and get the material out of the surface, maybe even in an inch or so, half inch to an inch, but it's not going to get 4 inches of creosote migration out. Even if you apply it on the outside and the inside, it will, when you have some high barometric pressure and some rains, it will leach back through. All byproducts of combustion have acids in it that will deteriorate your masonry. This chimney is clearly had chimney fires.
Mm-hmm.
They might try to argue when the chimney fire happened, and nobody can really tell you when a chimney fire happened, if it was yesterday or 10 years ago, unless there's some, maybe there's a repair last year and the repairs on top of all this creosote migration, that might be able to help you pinpoint that when it happened. But yeah, clearly has creosote.
Is this the same chimney? Is this
the same
problem
one? There's wood underneath the hearth extension or something. I remember being told something about that. What else we got? I don't think there's too many more photos.
I think more of that
Chimney
thing you're talking about.
What's that, maintenance?
This one?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you can see cracks in the masonry.
Mm-hmm. And then looks like it's a different chimney actually. That's Paul. And then this was a different one, obviously, or is this the top of that same?
It's the same one because it's brick on top.
Yep.
Pretty sure that's the same one. So there's been some repairs made, which might not help their situation, but it's hard to say if when those repairs were made versus when the chimney fire damage happened. And an engineer is going to try to say that repair happened after the chimney fire for sure.
Right.
But they might see this and how glaring, obviously, that there's, 10 years ago, didn't matter when the chimney fire happened. Didn't matter. But they need to have a data loss, data causation, and
well, in this case, with what he just presented, would you say it is a claim? It's a claimable situation?
There's clearly been chimney fires. The question is when, and it's not my job to prove when it happened. As if the insurance company can prove that it happened longer than a year ago, most insurance companies that I'm familiar with will give you a year of if it happened over a year ago, then you're SOL. But there's obvious been a chimney fire, high sudden occurrence, high heat event. There's a coverable loss unless you've not had it. Even if you've had chimney fires every year for the last 10 years, if you had one here in this last year, that's a claim.
So one thing we look for is a track of maintenance. So when did you have the chimney clean? Even if it wasn't by us or even a home inspector, sometimes we use the home inspector said everything was okay. Although we know that's not right. They said that, there was no issues. They had the chimney, whatever. And then something happened since the last, inspection or camera went up the chimney. And then we've used that in the past as a time frame to use. And that's been pretty helpful.
Oh, I don't have it. Okay. There's at one point, just to learn as much as I could, I saw Eisenhower posted something about the National Association of Forensic Engineers, NAFE, and that they had a journal back in, and their journal was essentially like their SOP for the National Association of Forensic Engineers. And in order to get the copies of their journals, you had to either be a member or an associate member. So I became an associate member. And the only journal that they had, at least at the time, I don't think they've got anyone since then, was written all the way back. Anything that dealt with chimney fires was all the way back in 1994. And I read that. And to your point, okay, if you have an inspection report, it doesn't say necessarily from a chimney sweep. Right. If you have an inspection report from a prior inspection report that says that there was no visible issues or no problems or everything was good, that is to be taken as fact.
Right. Yeah, that's a good weapon that we've used a few times, that it was inspected, no previous issues, even if it was us, no previous issues. Now we find a problem. You got a time frame. You've got something happen, a sudden occurrence. Go ahead.
In the chat, in the private chat, Paul Bianco, these are actually his pictures. He's saying, what type of repair would you be quoting here? I would tear that whole thing down and start over from scratch. He told me that the insurance company, there's no code upgrade on that claim, on that, not that claim, that policy. And there's not very many companies that do this, but it's dastardly. There's one specifically that will do it every single time. I'll call them out. I don't care. Allstate. It's very, very rare that you find an Allstate policy that has code upgrades built into it,
Okay.
or law and ordinance, whatever you want to call it. So you have to write that bid in the stupidest way possible, because they can't argue with what the customer had prior to damage. They will argue a prior fire. They'll argue a new wood burner. They'll argue anything that's different than what's there. So, Paul, you need to write that bid because of the insurance company that you're dealing with. You need to write, and this is opinion. I'm not telling you what to do. But I would write that bid in a way I would tearing the whole chimney down, coming back up from might even have to change. No, with that you have to exactly the way it is.
Right. The quote is like for like.
Pre-damage condition is the best way to put it. Like for like and same, like kind, quality. There's different ways of saying it, but pre-damage condition is the best way to put it. And with the fireplace, with the chamber, with wood underneath the hearth and everything, with a stove piped into the chamber wrong, you need to write the bid exactly the way it is, and that bid needs to have a really big summary that says we cannot perform the work in this manner. However, this is a pre-damage condition proposal.
Right.
That way the customer can
get
the right amount of money to be
Right.
able to get this thing taken care of. And especially if you have a public adjuster involved and he needs to take some money, he can have the firebox money. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't need to build a firebox.
Not going to build a firebox. There's that.
You don't really need that.
Yeah.
You're not gonna write about parging the chamber, because that chamber sure ain't parged. I can tell you with a confidence. Is it block with brick on top of it with veneer? Now you get to charge them for laying block and putting veneer on the block. All right. You could technically charge them for pulling and siding and putting it back on. You definitely need to charge it for scaffold.
Sure.
So like all these things that are going on here, if there's a power outlet in the mantle of that fireplace, you need to get that involved. There needs work to be done to make that right. Like,
so
nickel and dime, man.
Yeah. So we've got a few more minutes before our hour's up, and thank you for this. Do you ever use the Xactimate program? Because we went through that course, and we've had a few of our guys go through it, and we have access to that. Do you use that program?
How's that worked for you?
It works.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can never use their numbers.
No, Xactimate hates chimneys.
But
the only way to do it, like when we have a really big claim that we know is going to be really difficult, and I got a public adjuster involved, I will switch. I usually don't do the line items of labor, this much labor and this much materials. I usually don't do that. But when it comes to these really complicated ones that we have to push and fight and public adjusters involved, we will switch that way, and we'll use the ways and means, hourly wages for your mason, for your tender, for the HVAC, for the electrical, for the roofer, and those different hours and whatnot. And we'll do it by stories, because that's a different way to price it than per course or per 20-foot chimney or whatever. And we'll literally every part we will break down. Here's this part, that part, this part, and we have our markup on it, and they're not going to fight the markup as long as it's reasonable.
Well, when we went through the course with them, they said, because one of the arguments was it's way off on all the chimney numbers, and like, well, it's just an average. We don't set the prices. It's an average of your industry. So their point was, if you want a more accurate outcome, you need more guys using it. So we have a better, pool of numbers to work from on how much a chase cover is, how much of, top down rebuild, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Our
hourly rate.
Know that too, because they do that with roofers right now. And right now they will tell you how many shingles you can replace on a roof if you have a crappy insurance policy instead of replacing the roof, or they'll do one side and not the other, or, because roofing is everyone's got a roof and everyone knows you need a roof. Not everyone realizes that you need a chimney sweep. So to keep things complicated a little bit of smoke and mirrors is kind of in our favor. Um, I don't know the exact amount. I've heard some people use it in that style very effectively. Um, there are some circumstances where we will shift to that style, and
Right.
that is the way to do it because the public adjuster is involved. But when we're not, I just a personal preference. I don't prefer to do it that way.
Yeah, most of ours are not done that way, but there's times that we've asked, "Would you like it in that format?" And they say yes, and then we make the adjustments up, plus them up to what we need, and they have to make that, that they approve it or not. But just sometimes it just speaks their language, and some we've got. I
It
know,
can
like
be helpful. I've heard. So when I'm in a circumstance like that, sometimes I'll punt and get a some co-opetition
yeah,
involved and
hmm
say, if you want a competing bid, let's get another certified entity out, not just some guy with a ladder and a set of brushes and a rusty pickup truck. Let's get someone certified out there, and that's been a very effective tool to make sure that we get the right amount for our bids.
Well, thank you so much for being on here. I've left your contact information up here for people to reach out to you. You don't have the next class set up, correct?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do it before the big busy season, because that's when we
Okay.
find all these the most chimney fires, right? Is October 1st to the end of the year, right?
Yep.
So I think I'll probably hit one here towards the end of July, maybe in August.
Okay. Well, let us know, or we'll put it up on, on any of our things when you're going to do it. And then any details, how long is the class? How much does the class cost? That type of thing.
Yeah, I like the price structure that I did. We had 10 tickets at $200. Those went the first day, and then we had an early bird price for a month of $225. And it was $275 if you couldn't, if you're waited to last minute, and that seemed pretty fair. Um, I'll probably take closer to 4, maybe even 5 hours on the class,
Okay.
so I can get a lot more dialogue in it. But yeah, it's there's a lot to know, and I wish I could fit it all in 1 hour class, man. But
Well,
it took me 10 years to figure out all the ins and outs that I know, and I'm still learning.
yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Anything else you want to leave with before we finish?
Thanks for having me on the show, man.
Yeah, well, thanks for doing this. The industry needs it. I saw Kurt Chandler was backstage too. Thank you, Kurt, for joining. You guys are really key in helping our industry and homeowners get what they pay for, what they deserve, helping us chimney companies kind of fight the battle with some of these guys that are saying we don't know what we're doing or don't know what we're looking. So we need more advocates that are pro homeowner and pro chimney guys in my world. So thank you for being one of those guys.
All right.
All right, man. Thanks. Have a good night.
Good night.
All right, guys. So I hope you enjoyed the time. I got to change my screen here a little bit. Let me take his thing off. Well, anyway, reach out to him if you want more information, or would you like to attend his class? He's going to be doing that. Reach out to him, ask him to do that. I do know when we mention this, a lot of people need this information. And I've had probably 3 people now on this show have different takes on it. But the overall general take I'm getting is it's getting harder for insurance claims in a lot of places. Some people aren't having problems, but some people are absolutely being shut down. And from what I understand, the insurance industry is taking a beating. They're raising rates. I know my insurance for my company, I got lucky. It went up about 12%, but I was told the industry average is about 20%. And so, and then on the other side of that, we didn't talk about tonight, but I may have some other guys back on, is on the other side. Like, my company has been blamed for a couple things in the past. And one of the things I always do is show up to the event that will assign an adjuster to me. And we've only had one that was our issue, and or could have been our issue, but the majority of them, when you're there, just like Corey said, when you're there for the homeowner, for the engineer side, be there for your company too. Well, the biggest mistake I ever made was I let my insurance company send their own guy to represent me, and they just lay down. They fold like a dang, lawn chair. And quick story, and I'll end it. It was a It was a direct vent fireplace in a wooden chase. I'm sorry, in what looked like a brick chase, but it was prefab inside it wood, and a solid concrete top, and there were cracks in it. And we said, you know, you could see some rust on the outside of the frame of the direct vent. And the lady said, we're not going to use it at all. We saw it rusting, so we said, yeah, there's some cracks in the masonry. So we did some tuck pointing and waterproofing. Well, she used that fireplace and it caught fire. And what happened was there's so much water got in that structure, the wood fell down on top of the direct vent. And when they used that direct vent, it caught fire and had a horrendous house fire. Nobody was hurt. But they blamed us because we didn't do a level 2 on a direct vent. Because we didn't run a camera through it. And in my argument was, you can't run a camera. That's not how this works on a direct vent gas fireplace. You're thinking of a masonry fireplace or even a prefab, but a direct vent, they didn't know what they were doing. Therefore, I had to fight. It was like a $500,000 claim at the beginning, and they whittled it down to like a $30,000 claim, and they just quit fighting. I'm like, I would have fought that thing to the end, because she told us that wasn't going to use it. We had that in writing. We did a gas log service on it, and we checked the vent on the outside, and we did what we could do without disassembling the unit. And they claimed I should have done a level 2 on it when I found issues, and I'm like, that's impossible. We would have had to do a level 3 and take brick out and the top of the chimney out. So anyway, a little war story. All right, guys, I will be back next week. I think I've got a couple of talks lined up. I'll probably be talking about what we learned from Mark Sanborn and the Fred Factor and some of the other business stuff we went through last week at our accelerator meeting. So thanks again for joining me. I'm sorry for the confusion. Thank you all you guys backstage. You got backstage passes to the Flowers Stoner show. And thanks for hanging in there with us. And we will talk to you soon. See you later. Bye.